You are listening to the Little Psychic Podcast with June Mack, which was formerly known as the Fully Woo Podcast. I hope you enjoy.
Hi there, I'm your host June Mack, and you're listening to the Fully Woo Podcast. I'll be talking about all the fun woo-woo things in a down-to-earth, bright, light-hearted and easy-to-navigate way. Hopefully, I'll be able to help you ignite and light the way on your own spiritual journey and evolution too.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Fully Woo Podcast. Today's episode is all about you and getting to know your own psychic abilities. We cover a little bit about intuition, prophetic dreaming, the psychic senses, and talk about even how just knowing how your own gifts might already be working for you means you might have the opportunity to build and flex upon your own psychic muscles. Hang around for all of this and more in episode 5.
Today's episode is brought to you by Guided, my 5-week live group program, which is a deep dive into working with and connecting with your spirit guides, and also learning how to receive from them intuitive insight. We start on June 7th. It's suitable for beginners, and you can find out more via junemac.com/programs.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Fully Woo Podcast. If you don't know me, I am your host June Mack. I am also a psychic, an intuitive energetic healer, and intuition mentor, which really just means that I love to help other people to discover and open up their own psychic abilities, which is actually what today's episode is about. It is about the psychic in you. Yes, you. Everyday people, even I'm talking Joe from accounting. I believe that everyone is born with some type of psychic ability. I do think that sometimes it's accidentally tuned out or turned off. If you think that this seems like a silly idea, maybe you're someone who's listening who thinks, I don't have any psychic abilities whatsoever, what are you talking about? Just hear me out, because you're obviously open-minded if you're here and listening to this podcast. So here is my interpretation of why I believe that we are all a little bit psychic. I think that we are more spirit than what we are human. We are a spirit having a human experience rather than a human who has spiritual experiences. So when we are born with human senses, of course, as well as our psychic senses, which I'm actually going to go through the main 6 and tell you all of the technical terms for your psychic senses. A lot of S sounds, which is probably really annoying for your ears. But our human senses, when we are born, are nurtured and tested and encouraged from the get-go. So when those of you that are mums or dads, you probably remember when you have your little baby sitting there and getting a hearing test. I can't remember if it is the first or the second day, I think, that they are born, and they come and put those cute little headphones on. You might have the little photo of your child that's got its headphones on where they are checking that your child can hear properly. So obviously all of these human senses, it's very important that they are checked out. They usually or generally have some form of eye tests. We continue to develop our children's motor skills. Like I remember, I think it's in kinder where they teach you how to hold scissors properly and kind of test you out, and you have to, cut along the little lines and making sure that you know how to hold a pencil properly. All of these things are nurtured, which is awesome. and taken care of, and making sure that we're not falling behind with these types of things from day one. In most cases, our psychic senses are not taken care of in this way, or they're not usually nurtured or encouraged. We're not really encouraged to share or keep using them and testing them. So I guess like what happens to a muscle that hasn't been used, our psychic senses can tend to, I want to say, dull down. I don't want to say like a muscle that's sort of wasted away. If you don't use a muscle, it sort of gets a bit weak and it kind of almost disappears. I believe that they are always there, but they can, somewhat lie dormant. And psychic abilities can even lay dormant for lifetimes. If we all have them there, it's just we have the choice also as to whether we want to develop them or accept them. Gifts can also accidentally be shut down. But I suppose like how you need to use a muscle for it to get stronger or to grow or develop, I kind of think of it in the same way for your psychic senses. So gifts can be shut down, I suppose, by the actual person. So by you, if you decide that maybe when you were younger, you saw something a little scary or something that freaked you out and you thought, oh, hell no, I do not want to have this ability anymore. And you decide to turn it off. So we have the ability or the choice of free will, which is amazing. So we can pick and choose what it is we do and we don't want to have. People that do get afraid by some of these things that happen, obviously they don't have the right person to kind of hold their hand through it and show them that whatever it is that you don't want or which parts you don't like, you can set these boundaries with your spirit guides and be like, hey, you know how this happened? I really didn't like it. Can we just, take it easy next time? Your spirit guides never want to scare you. They never want to give you something that is too much. And honestly, it's as easy as saying, hey, wasn't cool with that. Can we make sure that doesn't happen next time? And for me, it never happens again until I say, okay, you know how I said no about this particular ability? I think I'm ready now, give it to me. Also, we may shut it down, I suppose, if we get ridiculed. You might find that people think you're a bit strange if you are kind of having a chat to, Rachel's grandma who's standing behind her while she's there. So you think, I just want to fit in. I want to be like the majority of people. I also don't want this gift. We are, sometimes told it's not normal, or like I mentioned before, we don't understand how to use our gifts properly or where to go and get help. So we can ask it to be shut down. And if you're thinking maybe, not me, I'm not psychic, I've never seen a ghost, like in The Sixth Sense, it's never like that. It's quite beautiful. I believe when I connect, it's actually a really amazing thing, and it feels like love. You might be thinking, I've never read anyone's mind or seen the future. Let me tell you, most psychic experiences or abilities aren't experienced like they might be portrayed in Hollywood. It's really usually a lot simpler than you might think. So the ways that you might experience these things, when I run my face-to-face workshops or like online workshops or programs, and I ask people, who have experienced some of these particular psychic senses that we're going to talk about or intuitive feelings, most of the room put their hand up for at least one thing. So we'll have a little bit of a talk about what the actual things are, and you can tell me or have a think about whether you have experienced them. And I bet you, especially if you're listening to this podcast, you would have experienced at least one of these things. So I don't think people who class themselves as psychics or mediums or intuitives or whatever it is you want to call them, light workers, are any more special than everybody else. I don't think that they are we are the chosen ones and that only specific people, have the right to use these skills. There's some really crazy stuff that I read out there, things like, you have to come to me if you want to be a psychic because only I can activate your psychic senses. You activate your psychic senses. You make the choice as to whether you want to use them or develop them or grow them or not. I have spent personally a lot of time developing my own psychic abilities and put a lot of work into it, and it's so much easier than you think. But I am someone who just wants to continue to grow and keep getting better. I don't want to get stagnant, and I just love it. So this is the reason why I haven't stopped. But really, you only need a little bit of an ability or a little bit of an understanding as to how it is that they work to change your life for the better. You don't obviously know everyone wants to be a light worker. They don't need to go down to the extensive path that I have. Just learning to understand your intuition just a little bit can help you hugely. So that's what I'm kind of hoping this podcast episode does, is even just making you aware of, yes, you are psychic. Yes, you do have intuitive abilities. I'm hoping that now that you're aware and you pick up things that you actually can do, that because you're aware, you're going to use these skills more, and then from then on, they will grow. So basically, just being aware of what it is or how it is that you receive messages will make a huge difference in being able to develop it, because most people don't know that these particular things are actual abilities. We all have them to different degrees because we're all different, and I am not a chosen one. I actually chose it. I chose because I felt that with every ounce of my being, that I am meant to be in the work that I'm doing, that I'm here to serve. So I chose to look more into it and to understand our birth-given right to use these abilities or gifts. I choose to hone in to develop these skills. I'm the one who spent, days, years in practice to refine them, and I will never stop because this is my path. And I love teaching others to be able to open up and understand their own abilities too. So I have to practice what I preach. I've got to keep getting better, right? But it's kind of like, I like to think of it as like with singing, because people say, well, I've never experienced, anything, or if they're psychics, why can't everyone do it? It's kind of like singing. We can all sing technically. So I could start singing now and technically I'm singing. Does it sound any good? Am I any good at it? Hell no. You don't want to hear me sing. It's definitely something that I need to save your ears from. And do I enjoy it? Kind of, I suppose, like when I'm in the car or something and the kids aren't there and I'm, reliving 2003 when I was 18 years old and first going to the clubs and stuff. I do enjoy it a little bit, of course, but do I have the determination to become great at that? Is it something that I know is in my life path, is singing? Would I spend a lot of time trying to develop my singing voice? Probably not. And this is exactly how it works with psychic gifts. We all have our talents. We all have our passions in life. And that singing is just not where it sits with me. And it's exactly the same for psychics or intuitives. But if you have an intriguement or a little niggling or a little excitement when you think about awakening your own psychic abilities or developing them, then there is probably a reason behind it. It's something that you are probably supposed to explore, whether it just be for yourself and for your everyday life, or whether it be something that, maybe you accidentally or end up doing it for a living, like I have. Not saying that that's everybody, because, that's not everybody's life path. Some of us are here to be nurturers and to look after little kids, or to be healers in different ways, like doctors and nurses. We all have our different things because we are all unique. The same with singers too, I suppose. It's like we are all unique in our psychic abilities, and singers are all unique. There are some people that are really good at singing the high notes. There are some people that are really good at singing the low notes, or I actually don't know anything about singing. So sorry to whoever is listening to this and is like, oh my gosh, she has no idea what she's talking about. It's the same as with intuitives. We have some parts that I love doing, other parts that I'm not so excited to do. There are some things that I feel like, yeah, I'm really good at that. This is my jam. And then other things that I dread having to practice. So it's the same. Okay. So let's get into these actual abilities and how they work and how you might experience them. I don't think they need to be switched on like you might read out there. They are always there. It's just a matter of being aware. I think that is what will help you grow them and understanding them and then being able to flex that muscle, I suppose. The first thing I want to talk about is your intuition. So your intuition is usually experienced through your psychic clairs, which is exactly what we're going to go into. They're called your clairs. And your intuition, or that gut feeling, or whatever it is you want to call it, it feels different for every person. And that is because every person is different. So some people like to describe it as maybe a gut feeling, or something they just know to be right, just a knowing. There are lots of different ways it can be experienced. For me, when I'm using my intuition, when I know I need to be doing something, it feels like excitement. And this is how it works for a lot of different people. And whenever I do readings, it's something that Spirit always bring up, is that we actually all have our own internal compass that we are born with, that Spirit gives us, or God gives us, or the divine gives us, or the universe gives us. And we just forget to use it. We get so caught up using our brains, which is not, 100% a bad thing. We need that too. But we get so caught up in our own thoughts, in our own overthinking, that we forget that we have this internal compass, which can make things so much easier. So when I should be doing something, or there's something that is right for me, I literally approach it like a child does, and notice the feelings in your body. So the more you become aware of how it feels for you, the more you'll get better at making choices based on your intuition, rather than what Joe tells you to do, what mum tells you to do, what dad tells you to do, what your partner tells you to do. And you'll feel more comfortable making the choices for yourself and what feels right for you. So for me, you might notice, when you think about making it a choice, you've got two things in front of you. For me, when I'm making the right decision, maybe my heart, might skip a couple of little beats, or I get butterflies in my stomach. Sometimes I get goosebumps because that's my sign from my spirit guides when I'm onto something that is correct. And when I'm looking at something that seems like a good logical decision, like sometimes I get offers for jobs, or certain things are a little bit different, from potential clients, or collaboration offers, and when it doesn't feel right, I don't have that same excitement. It's more like my gut drops maybe, or a bit of a yucky feeling in my tummy, and I don't feel excited by the idea. Like in my head, everything lines up. Like that would be a complete logical decision to make, but I actually feel like I have resistance against making that decision. And that's where I have learned to differentiate between what is a good decision with using my intuition and what is a bad decision for me using my intuition. And when I started using that and noticing how it feels for me, and then actually consciously writing down exactly how it is that I felt when I made a choice that felt right, and then noting down the outcomes, like did this work out for me or didn't it work out for me when I went against my intuition, it was actually pretty crazy how it got easier I still don't make all the right choices, but it has become a lot easier. and things started working out a lot better, a lot faster, rather than how it had been previously. I believe that if you write it down and you actually take notice and jot down as to when you listen to your intuition versus what happens when you don't, you'll start to see the big differences there. But it's almost like it consciously needs to be noted to begin with before you start to figure out what the similarities are there. So, that is an example of what all of us, I bet you most people listening have felt intuition in some form in that way. And once you notice what it is, like whether your stomach alerts, whether your stomach sinks, whether you feel unwell, whatever it is for you, take notice and build on it. Another thing that I have noticed is very, very common are prophetic dreams. Is that how you say it? Prophetic? Prophetic. I should really research these things before I decide to record. Anyway, what they are dreams that actually end up coming true. So something happens in your dream and then the dream actually comes to light. It's almost like a little warning, or sometimes they can be just getting you ready for something that's about to happen, or sometimes they're completely random things, like literally putting a lid on a juicer on a particular day at a particular time, and you're like, hey, I've dreamt this before. That is actually a prophetic dream or an ability. And once you decide to invite your spirit guides in, my experience with clients who are inside Bloom, which is my psychic development program, or one-on-one people who I mentor, their dreams usually go up by tenfold. Their vivid dreams with communications and prophetic dreams, it goes nuts. And they actually have, a couple of my clients have actually had to say, hey, can you just leave me alone in my sleep? Set the boundaries with spirit, because I'm actually getting no sleep because I keep getting woken up and thinking about these things, which they totally will back off if you ask them to. But a lot of the time I like it because I think it's cool. Okay, so there are a couple of things which you might have experienced. The 6 main clairs, which I'm going to talk about, your psychic senses, or your psychic clairs, are clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairgustance, clairalience. What do they all mean? A whole lot of clairs. There's arguments on exactly how many there are, but there are more than the main 6. There's things like clairtendency and clairempathy, but I'm just going to stick to the main ones for today, because otherwise we're going to be here for a while. So starting with the first one, the one that most people, when I have them in as clients, are desperate to have, is clairvoyance. And clairvoyance is the psychic sense of seeing, so being able to receive images. And this is one of my main clairs, one of my first clairs that I noticed. And how it generally works is there's a couple of ways, or there's probably more than one, but it's more than 2. But the 2 main ways that clairvoyance can work is seeing images in your mind's eye, which is how I experience most of my clairvoyant images. You might have heard the term third eye, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And third eye just corresponds to your mind's eye, which pretty much looks like the same place where you would imagine things. So this is the easiest way that I have found to explain it is, so if you literally close your eyes right now, and I ask you to please imagine a green grasshopper. Can you see a green grasshopper in your mind right now? Hopefully you can. Some people aren't very good at visualizing, and that's okay because we're all different. Keep your eyes closed and imagine for me a pink flower. Can you see a pink flower? I'm guessing most of you can. Most people's clairvoyance works exactly like this. They will see images in their mind's eye exactly in the same place where you will see things that you imagine. It's not like how most people think. This is majority of people. So I am what you would call a mental medium or a mental psychic, which doesn't sound like the best name, but it means technically that I see, spirit or whatever in my mind's eye and not physically outside in it, like an apparition or out on the outside of, like in front of me, basically. I have experienced this, seeing things actually physically in front of me. and it is generally in between a sleep and awake type state. So I guess, in a very, high vibe, analytical mind switched off type of state. And I will see actual things like smoke, which I think is spirit, or, people, sometimes spirit standing in front of me, but it's generally in between sleep and awake. It's been happening more and more. I don't know if it's gearing me up for, being able to see things in this way, which at this point I'm open to. There was an actual stage where I said, okay, I'm ready to see spirit in front of me now. Be careful what you wish for. Literally that night, didn't think it was going to happen that quickly. There was a little boy in my room, and I very quickly, I opened my eyes in the middle of the night, and he was basically standing there, and I pretty much crapped myself. And I said, I changed my mind. I'm not ready. I'm actually not ready to see things with my physical eyes. I'm really sorry. Please go away. And I just prayed that he would find someone who could help him, because I was not ready to see that. And I actually remember I really needed to go to the toilet, and I was too afraid to get out of bed. So I ended up just spooning my husband and shaking. So that didn't work out so well. That was probably a while ago now. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more open to it now, because I understand how they are. I never let anything but love and light, spirit in. So I would be a little bit more open to it. So that's how clairvoyance can be experienced. And for most people with their psychic abilities, it's not really like in the movies, where, or I don't know, you might be a book that you've read and someone hits their head and then they wake up and they can see spirit, or they're psychic, or, actually I've heard quite a few experiences where people have had life or death situations, near death experience, NDE, and then they're able to all of a sudden use their abilities. For most people, it's like a gradual up leveling, because your spirit guides generally don't give you anything that you are not ready for. So in most cases. So for me, when I first started seeing clairvoyant images, it was during meditation, and they started out as small flickers of images. And at the beginning, it's really hard to be like, hey, am I just imagining that? Or is this actually happening? And my advice to you would be just believe it's happening, because things will happen a lot quicker if you actually believe that it's a thing, because then your spirit guides won't get deterred by you, constantly questioning yourself. Once you decide, okay, it's a thing, and you just go from there, the more or the quicker things are going to happen. So I started seeing, little flickers of pyramids or Egypt, and then little I believe past life flickers of me. And then slowly over time with meditation and with, different types of psychic development, and building that connection with my spirit guides, is when these images, I was able to hold them for longer. They stayed for longer. They were able to move and do different things, as to now I can see them like little movies playing out, little snippets of moving movies. And that is pretty much how it has developed over time for me, my clairvoyance. So, an example, sorry, that was a long pause. An example of how clairvoyance has actually affected, like a normal person. I'm talking about my husband here. It just came to my mind, and I was like, should I tell this story? I'm already at 26 minutes. No, I'm just going to tell this story. My husband, he's quite intuitive, right? But he's not, a psychic or anything. But how it popped in, an example of clairvoyance popped in for him was when he was younger. And I can't remember if I already told this story on a podcast. If I have, apologies. I create material all over the place, and sometimes I can't remember where I've actually told stories. So just fast forward me, press that little button if you've already heard this story. But he was, out drinking, doing silly things with his friends. This is when he was a lot younger, by the way. And he, in his mind, while he was standing there, in his mind's eye, in his third eye, he saw little flashes or clairvoyant images of sirens. So red and blue sirens. And he was like, ooh, I feel like I need to get out of here. So he left that situation and got a message, like half an hour later from the boys that had stayed, that basically said, as soon as you left, the cops turned up and we got in trouble for public drinking and blah, blah, blah. So that's an example of, how you may have experienced clairvoyance in the past. The second, probably most commonly known about psychic sense or clair, is clairaudience, which is the psychic sense of hearing. And The same as clairvoyance, it's not generally experienced how you might think. With clairvoyance, of course, there are people that see things outside of their mind, but it's actually rarer than a mental psychic or a mental medium. So with clairaudience, the way that most people hear their psychic sense of hearing is actually with their own voice in their own head. So it can get really hard to differentiate the difference between what are your own actual thoughts and what are psychic or intuitive messages coming through. And once I was aware of this though, like, oh my gosh, that's actually clairaudience. I was like, oh wow, all these ideas that I'd had previously, all these, little intuitive things which I thought were just, me being a good judge of character about someone in particular, this was clairaudience. And once I figured it out, I started to be able to tell the difference easier. Sometimes I still get it wrong between what are clairaudience messages and what is my own thoughts. And this can come in so many different ways. So there's another person who's inside Bloom, my psychic mentoring, who experiences clairaudience messages once hers started developing, it changed from her voice to a voice of someone in her family. So she might hear clairaudient messages in like her children's voices or in her husband's voice in her mind, which I actually think it might sound a little bit creepy, but I actually think it's pretty cool because that gives her a actual, point of difference to know which are psychic messages and which are her own thoughts. You can hear with clairaudience things outside of your ear, so actual sounds. This has happened to me, but again, a lot more rarely. Usually it's in my head, but occasionally, and I'm talking probably like once every couple of months, I will hear something outside of my ear, something like a knock or a whistle or like a door banging, something, generally there's those types of sounds. And I promise you, it's not an actual door knocking or an actual, door closing. I know I figured out kind of what it means when it happens, and that's a story for another time. Like when I hear the knocking, it generally means I need to move forward with something in my life. And that's what I've come to realize it means. And so that's sort of how my clairaudience is, but it has started to develop over time, just like my clairvoyance. What actually happens before now when I'm about to receive a psychic message, and this can happen when your sense of hearing is developing or psychic sense of hearing is developing, is it sounds like, when you put a shell over your ear and you can hear the ocean you can hear the ocean inside. It's kind of like a type of noise. Sorry for my terrible interpretation of sound. And sometimes I can even hear my own heart beating in my ear. And generally when that happens, I'm like, oh, something's about to go down. There's a message about to come through. Or I've had some bizarre experiences with that lately. But again, that's a story for another time. What can happen as well is when your clairaudience is developing, or if another message is going to get through, a lot of people report a ringing in their ears, or a high-pitched ringing, or just like a normal sound ringing. This doesn't mean don't go to the doctor. If this is happening a lot, like it could actually be a medical condition, but it can also happen when your psychic sense of hearing is developing, or if your spirit guides want to get a message across, or there's something you should be taking notice of. Sometimes I get a little pain in my, it doesn't sound very nice, does it? But almost like a little pinprick going into my eardrum. It sounds awful. Sounds awful, but I've noticed that happens as well when it's like messages need to come through, or if I'm in a reading, or I've been using my clairaudience. So that is how that works. So I wonder how many of you have experienced that, and I know a lot of you. So this is what happens in my psychic mentoring. A lot of my clients are like, oh my gosh, how many of the things that have actually come through have actually been then like either my ideas, or how many have been like intuitive downloads? And it kind of blows their mind. So the other two main ones are claircognizance and clairsentience. So claircognizance is the psychic sense of knowing, and a lot of people have experienced this just when you know something is about to happen, whether it be something really exciting or something bad and you need to get out of there, or you might meet somebody and just not like them and they haven't done anything in particular, you just know you don't vibe with them. That is claircognizance. You might know someone's in trouble. You might know a friend is upset. Like all of a sudden you're like, I need to call my friend. I feel like something's going on there. And then you call them and you are 100% right. That is claircognizance. And there are a lot of people that have this very strongly and don't necessarily have, clairvoyance super strong, and or vice versa. This is the cool thing that I love, is hearing about what are their main psychic senses and how they use them. It doesn't mean that one is any better than the other, because you once one up levels, you might have one that's stronger. They do actually all sort of collectively up level together. So there are some clairs that I didn't experience at the beginning that I've only just started to experience now. Clairsentience, the psychic sense of feeling. So how I take this is like when you feel emotions. So it's actually, I think, a very handy one to have, because it makes you, a very empathetic person when you're reading for someone who's been gone through a lot, or when you have someone in spirit that's with you and you need to communicate this to the person. You have that empathy there. You can actually feel, I often tap into someone and I feel a heaviness on my chest, which to me is a sign for anxiety. I will, straight away know this person suffers from anxiety, or they're going through a time in their life where they're quite anxious. Sometimes before a reading, all of a sudden my heart rate picks up. So I kind of start tuning into the person who I'm about to read a little while, maybe like half an hour before the reading. I'll be like, okay, spirit guides, and whoever the person is, their spirit guides, please start giving me some messages. And sometimes I'm like, I feel so excited. And even though I love my work and I'm always excited for things that I do, I'm like, this is not my excitement. I bet you when I turn on that little computer screen, the person on the other end is going to be squealing. And that does happen. The person's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I've waited for this. I can't wait. I've been waiting all week. I feel, when people have passion for certain things, like if someone's an artist and I feel their passion for what it is that they do, I feel longing. I feel love. Like when I tune into someone and then their child, and I just feel that person's love for their child. I feel people who are very lonely, who have jealousy. Clairsentience is a very useful clair to have. It makes you, empathetic towards other people. Often when I receive messages too, it doesn't come through, and this would happen for you as well. Like if you were like, oh my gosh, I've totally experienced quite a few of those things that you've listed. I, especially during readings, I don't just experience them one at a time. I experience them all together, just like how you are listening right now. You're probably looking at something, you're probably sitting or feeling something. There's something that you are, feeling to somewhat. So you've got your human senses, which are all happening at once. It's very similar for me anyway, with my psychic senses. I generally, all of a sudden, will receive like a big dump of info. I probably should have picked better words there. So I might see a visual of a dog, and then I will feel the emotion, which is just like, complete love for this dog or care or nurturing. And I might know that this person is just a huge animal person or has a special gift, with animals. So that's kind of an example of how I receive it. And then it's also, and there's a whole issue of learning to decipher your messages. So, just before I get into the last two psychic senses, if you ever go to a psychic and you were like, oh my gosh, they don't know what they're doing, they were way off with that. I am standing up for, most psychics are completely legitimate. It's just literally like playing charades. Like your spirit guides or my spirit guides don't talk like humans do. It's not verbal. Well, for me, it's not quite like that yet. I hope one day it will be that easy. But it's like I will receive a visual of, for example, what's the visual that I get that took me ages to decipher? So dominoes, one domino tipping and then them all falling over. And I've learned that is my psychic symbol for when someone starts something, it's whatever's going to happen is going to happen really quickly. And these symbols, so things like that, flashing really quickly before me, I've got to try, and it's almost like play charades with spirit and interpret what it is that they're trying to say. And sometimes symbols come up and I don't know what they mean. So I had someone the other week who was practicing doing a reading, and she kept seeing an apple for me. She was practicing reading me. So one of my clients, and she's like, apple. I see an apple. And it came up a few times and I'm like, I don't know what this apple means. I'm so sorry. And she's a great intuitive, but she kept seeing this apple. And I said, go deeper, ask your spirit guides, what does this apple actually mean? And she was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. What does this apple mean? And then it went to a toothbrush on the apple, and she's like, oh, teeth. And that was spot on for me, because I had been thinking that I need to book in the darn dentist because I haven't been, oh my gosh, it might even be like over a year now. Like there's nothing going on, but I just know that I need to go, because last time I went, I didn't feel like anything was happening. Then they're like, you have $1,700 worth of fillings that need to take place, you know, deep down in your whatever root canal or whatever, that you can't feel or see anything. So I was like, great. So anyway, hopefully it's not that situation. But okay, we've gone on a bit of a tangent. The last two psychic clairs I want to talk about are the psychic sense of taste and the psychic sense of smell. So they are clair aliens is the psychic sense of smell, and clair, oh, what is the other one? Clair aliens is smell. Oh, clair gustu or clair gustance is the psychic sense of taste. And these two are a lot rarer than the rest, but I have met some people that like, they're really good at this. For me, myself, I only started experience the psychic sense of smell this year. And it's something that happened when I started developing my mediumship. And in mediumship circles, so a learning circle that you go in with a bunch of mediums and you all, you know, read for each other their passed over loved ones. A spirit came in that smelt like cigars, and that was their grandfather, and that was the first time that I'd ever experienced clair alien, so the psychic sense of smell. Really hasn't happened since, so it might come back, hopefully. So for you guys, if you think that, you know, these are things that you'd really like to build on, there are lots of different ways that you can build on your own clairs. Like you could literally probably Google, I have some stuff in my Facebook actually, or if you're looking for links of previous videos, free material that I've done, just let me know, you know, find me on social media at Ms. June Mac, and I'll send you the links for, you know, free materials that you can use there. There is some that I've got, but this episode, you know, it's going to be too long if I go into how all the different ways you can develop them. But even just being aware of them and how they work will help you immensely. Now that you know, make sure you take more notice. Each time you notice something, act on these psychic feelings, or give your spirit guides some acknowledgement like, hey, I got that, thank you, because your spirit guides get so excited when you understood a message that they gave to you, or when you give them gratitude. There is nothing more that they love than gratitude, because it's such a high vibe. Gratitude, love, thank you for that, got it. You'll get more. They'll be like, oh my gosh, she got that, I'm going to give her more. And they get super excited, and you'll get quicker at acting on your intuitive feelings, and life will begin to flow, you know, so much easier. There's so many handy aspects of intuition in terms of, you know, even people that you associate with, relationships, you know, that you have. Oh my gosh, imagine all the time you could have saved not, you know, dating all the wrong people, with your family, with your work, with your career. So I hope that you have found this episode useful. Can't wait to hear if you have any feedback. Feel free to DM me, or let me know if you have any questions about it. If you are interested to really go deep on this stuff and you're like, oh, I just want to learn so much more about this and have someone help me through, because with me, for example, I was experiencing all these things and I'm like, what do I do with this? I don't know how to control this. You can work with me in Bloom, which is my one-on-one psychic mentoring. It goes for 7 weeks. So you can find that at junemac.com/programs, and we will bring out the psychic in you. Sorry, I just clicked. I don't know why I did that. But really, if you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go that deep just yet, the first step really of all of this is your connection with your spirit guides. And that is when I had a lot of these psychic clairs, but when things really started to level up and quickly, was when I started to connect with and build on my relationship with my own spirit guides, because technically they are the ones that are showing you the things that you can see, that are giving you the messages that you can hear, that are giving you the knowings or the feelings or the smells or the tastes or whatever it is you want to call it. So Guided is which is mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, my 5-week group program that will teach you how to connect with your spirit guides. It will teach you how to start deciphering the messages that are coming through, and it starts on June 7. So if you would like in on that, it's a very small number that I'm going to allow in because I want to be able to give you all the best mentoring possible. So junemac.com/programs, click on Guided if you want to read everything about it and see if it's for you. So if you do decide to take that leap, I cannot recommend it enough. Your life will change for the better. Your intuition will explode. I could go on and on about that. It's honestly the best decision I ever made was to connect properly with my spirit guides. But my last piece of advice for you before I go is don't put any expectations on yourself or think this is how it's supposed to be. I don't experience it like that. And don't compare yourself to anyone. Like, oh my gosh, she's seeing things in movies. Why doesn't that happen for me? Or, it's hard. I know I do it as well. And I'm like, wow, that person just knew that. How? So quickly. But because we are all different, we all experience these things different. So if you go in with expectations, there's more chance of you being let down. Or the harder you try or the more pressure you put on yourself, the more you shut it down. Going in development with fun attitude and excitement, and just with not massive expectations but being excited, is the best place to come from. So there you go. So I would like to say thank you so much for being here. I am so super grateful to have had you and your time. If you enjoyed this episode, please do the whole rating, follow thing, whatever platform you're listening to this on. If you want to find me or any of my things, they're all in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day or night, and thank you again. See you later, guys.
I'm June Mack, and I wanted to thank you for tuning in to the Fully Woo podcast. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have had you here. You can find me over at junemac.com or on all social media as Ms. June Mack. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much if you could please subscribe, rate, review, and share. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a privilege to be in your ears.